All right, everybody, we are live, and I have a very special guest today. Very excited about. Got some folks watching already. You do not want to miss this. Stay on the live stream. We have very important topics that we're dealing with. The last couple interviews on the GPR Hot Seat that we did have gotten a ton of comments because we're really hitting topics that everybody's sort of struggling with. So my name is Dan Bigman. I am the president of Bigman Geophysical and the GPR professor, self-proclaimed at LearnGPR.com. And our guest today on Hot Seat episode number 7 is Elle Archer. And so she's from New Zealand. We had met back when I made my first trip to Australia for the NULCA Australia conference. And, look, we had a lot of common interests and a lot of common visions, I think, for the industry we work in, the, non-destructive testing and locating industry, as well as kind of where we think it fits within the world. And so I'm really, really pleased to have Elle on the podcast today. So Elle, thank you so much for coming. I do appreciate it. I'm glad we got to kind of connect. I know it's evening for me, morning for you, but we made it happen.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you so much for having me on.
My pleasure.
Order to everybody.
Yeah. So tell everybody a little bit about yourself. Kind of what's your background? Because I don't bring people on that don't have a lot to offer. The people I bring on have tons to offer to everybody. So tell everybody about your background because you've had quite a career.
It's been pretty crazy, actually. We become what we create. So I have been working, I think, since I can remember. And at the same time, I've been working, learning, and moving through the different areas. So I've had been a partner in a geospatial technology company. At the same time, working through non-destructive testing, education, as well as getting out and doing the jobs and doing the work. So from ultrasonics, I think, is where I started, and then I went forward into eddy current, electromagnetics, radar, which has become one of my loves, and then onwards through UAV, LiDAR, multiple sets of technologies, and then going out on varying sites for actually doing the work and doing the job. So. And then from there, teaching people want to know how to do some of these things. So really working in the utility location industry when it didn't know it existed. And that was back in 2011, 2012 was when we really started to get into the utility location side, primarily because no one was doing anything. And the people that were just as frustrated as myself that there wasn't as many people or any interest shown. I mean, back in 2012, it was just, we were all just siloed individuals just trying to do as best as we can. So
there's an important piece, right? Because I think this is something that was common across the world, right? Where industries, I mean, I come from academia originally, and, there's sort of a quote, and I'm going to butcher it, but there's a guy, Marvin Harris, who made this quote, who talked about, the departments in academia basically are silos of expert information who never talk to each other. And so, by not talking to each other, there's never a synergy towards pushing it as fast and as far as we can with our understanding. Okay. And so that was kind of his point. And I think that mirrors what we see in the private sector, right? Unfortunately. And in reality, we're all sort of dealing with a common set of issues, but when we talk past each other or don't even have conversations with each other, it just slows the process, right? I mean, maybe eventually we get to the place we're trying to go, but if everyone's working on these problems uniquely, somebody may have solved your problem already, but because they're in a different industry, you'll never hear about it. And it's such a it's like a stunt, to growth and benefit. So here's my question is, why do you think it stayed siloed for so long? And you talk all the time about collaboration and integration, even on a global scale. how do we move towards, from silos to kind of integration? Because we're not there yet. It's still pretty siloed across most of the world.
Look, I think at the end of the day, behavior, I don't want to go into psychology, but it's culture-driven behavior, and where you stick there and you stay there and this is mine. Ego has a bit of a part to play in it as well. But also, we've had to develop a lot of these areas. I'll just talk from the build perspective or the infrastructure perspective. Engineers had to learn how to be engineers and go through that. And I think that all those industry sectors, very important that they know their stuff. However, the world we need to move on. Shared knowledge and shared integration is super important as we move through, because we realize that with technology, our spaces are starting to cross-pollinate. Skills.
So how do we do that? Right. What would be some steps to start to move towards collaboration and integration?
Sure.
And talking about on the individual scale, where where is it the private sector, the public sector, and they're not kind of integrating together? Is it industries that are not integrating together? Is it individual companies and so much competition to grab market share that they're not talking and sharing knowledge? One thing I found, it's funny. Somebody said to me, because when I started the company, we run contracts, and then we started to teach and started to educate. And people were like, you have they said, you have a conflict of interest because you run contracts, but you educate your competitors. And it's a conflict of interest because you're teaching them, but then you're going to go after a contract. And we don't really go after the same contracts. But nonetheless, the point was that we taught the people that we were competing against. And I said, if anything, that's the opposite of conflict of interest. A conflict of interest is proprietary knowledge that's not shared, so nobody else can benefit. And I'm not saying it's bad or not a conflict of interest, but what I'm saying is me teaching folks how, is the opposite of that. Because I'm trying to take everything we learned and to be honest, all the mistakes we made, right? I mean, we made lots of mistakes over the years, but help people avoid those mistakes, so my point is, like, question, right? How do we get there then? Like, what's the, who are siloed from each other, and how do we move towards cross-pollination and integration? Is it through associations? Is it through conference? Is it through government? What's the best pathways?
Look, I think first of all, we have to put the why right up the top. Why are we doing what we're doing? Sure. So once we really look at the why, we realize it really comes down to shared purpose and what we're all trying to accomplish. Once we look at the why and we go, yep, is that what we're trying to do? Cool bananas, right? Who now needs to be involved? For me, we have we've spoken about this a few times, but we have a initiative called Smart Industries. It's directly related to the smart city thinking or smart society, if you've evolved in your smart city thinking. But Smart Industries is about getting everybody together, okay? All the right people together into one space. So from our perspective, what we're building here in New Zealand is we're getting together, the varying build industry sectors. So that particular sector, everything from, the engineers, the surveyors, the spatial people, the civil contractors, the utility locators, NULCA, New Zealand, really getting them all together and sitting them down and going, where do our spaces integrate? Where's the integration points? And the biggest part of this is understanding where are the spaces, where are the points that we connect? Where do we disconnect within a job? And then where is our reconnect points? And those are three primaries. When does a surveyor go over here, and when do they come back into the job? What we're doing at the moment is we have the ability with technology to do a lot of the specific jobs that require specialist knowledge, and that's not necessarily the right way to go. Why aren't we, for example, survey and spatial in New Zealand have been going for 131 or 132 years now. So why are we as utility locators reinventing the wheel with the survey side when we can tap that information and not only tap them, but bring them on board and work in collaboration?
Okay, so two questions for you then, because it's important is number one, what's your why, right? Because people may have different whys. And, you know, if you're putting why at the top, right, a shared kind of vision and integration and collaboration has to be with groups that agree, right, on what that why is.
Yeah.
And so question number one is what's your why? And question number two is we got a comment. And by the way, thank you everybody for commenting. Put your questions in. I can see them. You know, and so I kind of started to just figure this out about how I can view your questions and while we're doing it. So if you have a question, put it in. I'll try to get to it or have Ellie answer it. But we had a comment here from Shane over in the UK. It says integration is often restricted by a short-term plan of maximizing short-term profits and a lack of combined long-term plan with correct investment. So do you agree kind of with that statement? And if, you know, so then what is your why and what is that long-term kind of plan, right? What is that vision?
Well, hi, Shane from the UK, or kia ora from New Zealand. I completely agree with what he's saying.
And give likes and loves for her talking in was it Maori? That's Maori?
Māori, yeah.
Yeah, Maori, yeah. Everyone give likes and loves for her doing that first person to speak a different language on the hot seat.
Oh, we should be doing that on every webcast, man. Bring it in. Hey, look, Shane, I do agree with what you're saying. That is the issue. Our problem is our culture, and I'm talking about the economic culture, the culture that we're all kind of part of this great big cluster crazy at the moment, which had a deadline on it, which is up, is surrounded by the wallet before the purpose. And there's a bottom line to everything. We all understand that. That's why we all have businesses and you know, we do what we do. We get out, we do the job, we get paid for it, we do the lifestyle, right? And we look for some sort of fulfillment during all of that. But at the end of the day, the why really hasn't, or the collective why really hasn't been established or agreed upon within both our public and our private sectors. Reason being is because our public and private sectors are still divided. They are still in their own silos. Where is the connection there? And this is, you can break it down into investment. You can go into tons and tons of conversation regarding that. But the simplicity of it is really getting all of the right people together to really sit down and look at the much bigger picture. I call it the chessboard because I play chess, but really having a look at this chessboard and what we want to do with it and the moves that we want to make and who's making those moves. So is this a much bigger issue than how we work out how our build sector is going to work together better to sort out our infrastructure issues and get us cranking the way we should? Pretty much. This is why I've myself and a few others who believe in the thought process have gone, right, you know what? Instead of all the discussions, the amount of meetings we're having and the discussions we're having from a leadership governance perspective on this is mental because there's zero action. And some of the actions made are still siloed actions as opposed to encapsulating the thought process of shared purpose and connected workflows. Yeah. So
I always felt like
smart industries comes in because we're going, well, you know what, we're gonna take this step by step. We're gonna work with an industry sector as a whole, combine it, look at the skills cross-pollination, look at all of that and shared networks, shared knowledge, all of that, and work from there so that we have something tangible to move forward and take to our GOVT and the public and both the public and private sectors. Yeah.
I never thought that you know, owning a business and earning a profit had to be in contrast with a larger vision and purpose of benefit to other folks, right? It's always we also learn from the basics of things. It's like the more value you provide, the better off you do. You know, as a business, such like a basic concept, but people want to kind of rip it apart. And from kind of my perspective, I guess, is when we talk about why, or, why do we even do what we do, right? Like, why do we locate utilities and pipes in the ground before excavation to begin with, right? Why do we evaluate corrosion in bridge decks to begin with? Why do we evaluate the strength of, of metal or welds or what, whatever it is to begin with, right? If it's kind of all in the same piece. And all those parts come to safety, both of like, workers, site workers, and communities that we're working in, right? And so it's almost like if we strip down, all of this to, well, who really gets screwed when a gas main is hit? And we can talk about, well, the guy who hit it gets, the municipality, the asset owner, so forth. But like when it's a bad one, the community gets screwed, right? The kids that are in the area get screwed, right? The people whose houses get clobbered, it gets, get screwed. And maybe there's insurance, maybe there's not. But, the why for me was always like safety, right? Better decision making. It comes back to safety, and kind of the end user of all of this, which when you're a locator, we kind of look at the end user being sometimes the engineering firm or the contractor or the asset owner or the land developer. But ultimately, the end user, I think, of the benefit of not hitting utilities goes beyond that, which is the communities we're working in.
It's impact. It's the impact. Who are we impacting? So, and it's a much larger, a much larger impact than what people really are looking at. So this is why getting the right people together is important, because we only get a siloed view of, oh, it's impacting that's our figures and that's our figures. And well, why aren't we combining them and looking at the much larger picture? And the other side of it is we tend to be reactive in the underground infrastructure space or the utility location space. A lot of our stuff is reactive. And when you look at the thought process of being reactive versus proactive, it comes right back to design and planning. I don't like people calling as-built as-built, because I truly believe it's pre-built. It's a why are the locators, why are people not part of that, the design and planning process right from the beginning? And then it's not just the locators, it's everybody. So once again, who is involved right at the beginning with design and planning all the way through to getting on with the rest of the project and it works. Yeah.
So it's kind of the smart industries concept where, industries are not just talking to each other, but it's almost like automation of information, right? Between groups.
Absolutely.
You only, it's sort of like by being proactive and integrating networks of people in a digital world, we all have access to information that can benefit us, even if we had never realized we're supposed to be talking to this other group to begin with, right? Because we kind of all inform each other about it.
But I think the other thing is we need to attack the bigger issue, which is I don't want you to be involved in these conversations, because you're going to take 20% of my market share if I have you involved. My company is doing this and this and this, and this is our territory. Get out of it. The way that we're looking at opposition or competitor, things of that nature is a very interesting and I would say older way of looking at things. What we're finding now is we look at the C19 situation, right? First thing that Infrastructure New Zealand said, and they came out with a really great statement, which was the people who will survive long lengths of time are those who are in joint ventures, partnerships, all of that sort of thing. The people who will not survive are the ones who are, this is mine, I don't want anybody else involved because I want 100% of the profit, and end of story. Those are the people who will end up, the way the economy is going, will end up either falling over or will look at a significant decrease in profit, or not be able to diversify and really do what they want to do without looking at partnerships and adding others on to really enhance their offerings into the community.
Yeah.
And at the same time, work out what is our shared purpose, what's our value addition to society, as opposed to how much money can I make and to pay my mortgage and that sort of thing, because that's all very important. I have a mortgage too. You know,
Sure.
we're all in that same thing. But
Yeah,
if we really look at it,
well, it doesn't have to be mutually exclusive, right? You can still do good and make money for doing good. And I think that that's acceptable. I mean, people may, I'm not trying to make this, you know, political or anything like that, but I don't think they have to be mutually exclusive. I think you could do good things. And in some cases, the money actually helps you drive your purpose further than you would have without it. But so one thing it seems like New Zealand did then pretty recently to kind of help integrate folks, both within the industry and beyond the industry within New Zealand, is develop NULCA New Zealand. Tell us a little bit about, you know, when did that come about? What was the process in developing it? You know, why did you guys decide to go with a NULCA, you know, style organization? And how is NULCA New Zealand, and who else is behind it, right? And how is NULCA going about integrating with then these other industries to make sure that kind of, you know, the country benefits?
Okay. First of all, www.nulca.nz for anyone who wants to know our website. Go and have a look at all the
Say again, what is it again? Say it again. I'll put it in the comments too, but
NULCA.nz, NULCA.nz. So
or
go and have
NZ
a look.
for those people who watch me from the US.
That's exactly right.
I'm just saying. Yeah, we're odd ducks like that, but I just want to make sure everyone can translate the website. Go ahead.
Fair enough. So NULCA New Zealand, actually, the person who got us all together was a guy called Innes Fisher, who was our previous president. And there was a few of us in New Zealand that our voices were louder than most. What's going on? What's happening with the utility location? Why is there nothing here? All that sort of thing. So he actually got a bunch of us together and had the right conversations. And we just said, let's put something together. Now, eventually what was going to happen initially was Australia was going to come in and do that. But we, like many other different places, have our own culture. As a country, as a nation, we have our own culture. So we were like, well, thank you, Aussies. We will maintain a partnership with you. We really want to maintain a relationship with you, but we're gonna rock and roll this ourselves. So a few of us got together, including a one call provider. We have the country manager for our one call provider, which is Before You Dig, is the name of our one call in New Zealand. We got a few people from geophysical areas, locating businesses, all those sorts of things, training, health and safety. We really had a pick of some really good people. And then what we decided to do was we needed to put a plan of attack and a strategy, if you will. We had a great strategic workshop to have a look around. We realized we can't do this all of ourselves. We'd love to, but no, we need other people involved, because there is so much to do here with the utility location, but service infrastructure in general, that we realized we need more people and we needed bigger players to aid us. So then part of our strategy identification was we needed working groups set up. And we've had fantastic response from multiple people around New Zealand, including GOVT departments, so government departments, as well as the private sector. Health and safety are wanting to be involved as well, so including the industry bodies. So the industry bodies, what we're doing at the moment, and I can't say too much about that until it's been formalized, is we did a big reach out to a few of them to look at strategic partnerships. The reason is we realize, once again, we can't do everything ourselves. Our locators on site can't do everything ourselves. Let's get the right people in and start integrating them. And so that's really what's happening with NULCA New Zealand. It's collaborative, integrative, and connect. You know, we just want to connect and ensure we do the right job. And even if we have a look at the design and the way that we approach site in the very beginning, which should be the very beginning. We want to do this the right way. We look around the rest of the world, Common Ground Alliance, we look around at all our brother and sister associations as well, and we realize we have a lot to learn from them. So why not take those lessons that they've learned and pull it into our own country and try and do it the right way with a bit of innovation and thrown in as well. Yeah.
So how do you? It's a great background of how it came about. So two things is, number one, folks have been locating utilities in New Zealand for a long time.
Yeah.
So why has it taken this long for something like a NULCA New Zealand to come about? And number two is, if there are these kind of cultural differences, and obviously there's legal differences, of different quality levels and different, requirements country to country, is how do you think NULCA organizations or NULCA style organizations could get together in order to kind of, like you said, learn from each other? Because although we all have unique situations, country by country, there's definitely
similar issues.
Similar issues. So how, why did it take so long, and how can we kind of move forward as a collective of operations, to kind of help each other out?
I think, this is I think if we bring smart industries and we rise it above just the industry sector, and we rise it above just the national side of things, and we look at it as a global movement. I think, number one, we went NULCA because of the fact that we have brother and sister NULCA in other parts of the world, right?
Mm-hmm.
NULCA's in other parts of the world. So therefore we had some older brothers and sisters that would be able to aid us in the space, because we realized we didn't want to just be by ourselves. That doesn't make any sense. There's lots of knowledge out there and lots of experience as well. So I think what needs to happen more often than not, even just once, besides the damage prevention conferences we all go to, a lot of us go to the Oceania damage prevention conferences, the no digs, all these sorts of conferences. Besides that, why are we not getting online digitally and speaking with each other? Even as we've just moved up from committee to board in our thinking, and also formally, primarily because of the fact that we really wanted to, as an industry body, move our thinking up into big picture. So why aren't the boards or the committees connecting online, even just talking about, because it's great, you can send papers and do all of that and have magazine articles and things, but connecting like this is I think going to be very, very important, with a relatively flexible agenda as well, because you're absolutely right, we are facing the same issues more than often than not. Other industry sectors, civil contractors, surveyors are facing the same issues as well. So it's also the connection with other industry bodies. So one of our largest global thing within all of our industry bodies and industry associations, industry sectors, is skill development. That is a common thread. So where is a global group initiative for that? A lot of us, even though we're in New Zealand, and a lot of people don't understand this about NZ, but because we're on the other side of the world, away from everybody else, we do have a chance to think. We've got a chance to innovate. We've got a chance. They tend to use us as a test spot over here for technologies and thought process and all that sort of thing. So because we have a chance to think, we have some pretty awesome people over here. So where is the collaboration? Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, you bring up a really good point, and kind of we'll move to close it out in just a minute or two. But is the skill development, right? Without an organization, whether it's NULCA or something else, it's hard to implement a set of standards, whether they're required or not, because even non-required standards push industries forward, because as more and more companies get trained on the standards, the marketplace decides who they want working on their sites, right? Yeah. It always ends up being the marketplace. So, NULCA in the US, which we are we're a NULCA accredited company, Bigman Geophysical, by the way, here's my nice new hat. NULCA in the US has a set of standards for GPR. They have a set of standards for EM locating. And we are one of two companies that's been accredited by a third party to be able to provide a level of training where people can get certified. It's not required to be on site with it, but we've seen it grow in popularity quickly because people have been wanting a standard. They've been wanting to go around to their say, we meet the criteria to be certified, and our technicians meet the criteria. It's not a third, blah, blah, blah. It's a agreed upon standard by a recognized institution. And although it's not required, go ask the other guy bidding on the project whether they're certified or not. Because if they're not, and then something happens and they bring you into court and you say, yep, we brought the certified folks in, or no, we decided to not bring this. We had the choice to bring a certified guy or a non-certified, and we chose the non-certified. The industry is going to get propelled forward. And I think that's one of the big things that these organizations can do. They may not have always done it, well over time. And I'm not going to necessarily, but I mean, in general, but the movement towards skill development and set of standards that are agreed upon is so critical. And it's one thing that I think NULCA has done really well in the US. And I'm interested to see how NULCA New Zealand deals with it, going forward. And I'm not sure where you guys are with that, but
we are. So one of our working groups that we identified of the 4, because we had to prioritize, was standards. So we're aware of the PAS 128, the AS 5488, all those sorts of things. What we agreed upon right at the beginning was, let's get something there anyway. We had a situation, I don't know if other countries have this as well, but we had a situation where a lot of people, some practitioners were saying, I'm the best locator in New Zealand. No one can touch me. I'm fantastic. Utilizing like a basic avoidance unit. I'm the best locator in New Zealand. Once we actually, our one core provider put the certification in place, with NULCA AU, NULCA New Zealand, we were all there doing the whole thing. It really woke a lot of people up. I from the feedback that I'm getting, it woke lots and lots of people up to going, oh, maybe I'm not as good. Maybe I don't have the skills required to call myself a professional locator. And it really lifted a lot of us up. A lot of us who weren't reading, Jeff Ambrose or whoever, or weren't watching Daniel Bigman, or weren't really looking at ways to help ourselves in skill development, started to do that. And that's exactly what you want. So irrespective of what the standard is, in a new place, when you're trying to put something new in, put something in to bring awareness to people. Now we have a working group with the standards, and what we're looking at is devising a bit of a, I don't want to say it's a hybrid, really looking at customizing a standard. I don't know, something between AS 5488 and PAS 128. So because we were so divided on it, we had surveyors on one side saying that one's a good one. We had practitioners on the other side, contractors, saying that one's a good one. And we thought, well, why don't we look at putting something together? So one of our working groups is a standards group, in which a lot of the people who were helping to develop some new standards for the US from New Zealand are going to be working in that group as well, which is fantastic. I think you have to put something in to wake people up, to bring awareness to maybe you're not as awesome as what you thought you were. I walked away out of that certification because I'd been locating for a wee while and conducting training. I walked away from that certification going, jeepers, I really need to step up. Yeah.
No, we find that too. The folks who come to our training, sometimes we get people who have been doing it for 17 years and come out and they're like, gosh, number one, I wish I had it 17 years ago. And number two is like when, even though it might be 80% review, for somebody who's been doing it for that time or whatever, the few things that they might learn or the organization of the information starts to click light bulbs in their head. And they start saying like, they see projects flash before their eyes of project they did last week, project they did last month, 2 years ago, 8 years ago, whatever. This is what was going on, and we couldn't figure it out. And this is the first time that I got kind of this light bulb that clicked off, where now I understand what the limits were, or why we were successful on a project, but I never knew why we were successful, because you don't know what you don't know. And the worst is having either failure or success and not knowing why either happened, because then it's just like random chance.
Yeah.
And having the base knowledge to say that's why we had a failure, and it may not have been our fault, right? But this is what happened, and we can explain that to a customer now, or this is why we had success, and we should try to replicate this going forward, is a huge benefit for folks. And we have people literally been doing this for almost 2 decades come in sometimes who are just like,
yeah,
it's a lot of it was review, but these 3 things I never knew, and I wish I knew it 17 years ago. So,
yeah.
All right, closing comments. You know, what do you want to see from everybody out there? Kind of, you know, give us your vision of where the world is 10 years, you know, from now, as far as the locate, the GPR space, the non-destructive testing space. You know, where do you want to see us?
Really, I think I would love to see all the people involved having a better awareness of the larger space. So, for example, utility locators, absolutely fantastic foundation skill set for moving forward into other areas like leak detection, non-destructive testing, geophysical testing, and various forms of inspection, concrete scanning. I mean, a lot of us who are in the space understand it quite well. So first and foremost, if people are not aware of where, you know, the starting with a basic EMI radar situation, where it can actually take you, in cross-pollination or diverse business diversification or business partnership or shared partnerships, whatever you want to call it, and shared knowledge, then how are we supposed to grow this particular area if people don't have an understanding for it? Then I see the awareness up there, as well as skill pathway development there as well, microbites. So a contractor has said, you know what, I'm over digging this road. I've now reached this age. I'm thinking of going into the utility location side, but I have my contractor. So how do I do that? So what are the microbite modules that they can now go and get to go and do that? You know what? I'm now sick of. I'm not now sick of. I'm now over. I've handed down my knowledge of utilizing a radar or an EMI unit to go and locate with GPS, whatever. I now want to move into the post-processing side. So where's the microbite for post-processing? What I'm saying is, how are we making it easier for people to cross-pollinate from industry sector, from sector to sector, and be able to do that? So I see that as our future. And also, why does a locator need to be a locator? Can that locator be a worker that goes from there to there to there to there to there to there? You know, are we now opening up a much larger aspect? So I think what I'm trying to say is, in a collaborative, connective world, we open up flexibility for people, for people's lifestyles, bridging the gap between personal and professional. We open up a raft of new things for them. And also, I see our industry sectors as an organic needs-based. I don't like using the word structure, but it is a structure where, okay, our need is now over there. That's great. Look, we've got this workforce over here that can go towards the need. Let's do that. Let's get them skill trained in that, and then pull them out and they can go over there. Where we're not like that at the moment. We're not flexible. That's why a lot of our complaints is we're under-resourced. We are under-skills resourced. It's a huge complaint for a lot of us. So I suppose connective, collaborative world, understanding that there's a bottom line to everything. But if you think purpose over wallet, generally the wallet will follow.
Yeah. No, for sure. And the thing I love that you said in that last piece there, and then we'll sign off, is easy, right? Is you know, it's for some reason, and I don't know who dictated this in the past, but it was easy. It was not easy to get good information that was understandable to people, or equipment or software interfaces or whatever, to people who are actually conducting these things. And I think the piece that hits home for me in kind of your vision is like, let's grease the gears to make it easier for the folks in the field to be better, right? Stop putting obstacles in front of people and help them get better.
Yep.
Through whether it's available training, whether it's digital or in person, through software, through interfaces. You know, it doesn't have to be so difficult. The easier we can get all these pieces that were once kind of in a black box that only a handful of experts could understand, and if we could take those and make them usable by folks who are actually in the field conducting this work, I think we all get better off, right? And so figuring out how do we make it easy, I think is really a critical piece here. So Ellie, thank you so much. I appreciate you being on. I hope you had a good time. Everybody, you know, a few that are still here. I know people are from all over the world, and it's hard to always, you know, say the whole time. But we had a lot of folks chime in. Shane, thank you. You got somebody speaking directly to you here. Scott Masters said, "Sorry he can't stay, but he's off to do more training himself, and loves what you're doing in New Zealand." So. Not only the first,
Thanks, Scott.
another language is first person to get a call out by name and get praised for what you do. And so I think you deserve it. Ellie, I think you really have done a great job of leading the charge to make a better industry with purpose, with vision, and to really create, you know, safer communities out there. And so I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Where can people find you? Where can they get in touch with you?
LinkedIn, the new website's about to jump off elg.global. But LinkedIn is primarily where you'll find me at the moment, or any other global conference when we are starting to fly again, I suppose, in this space. We'll see you. But I just want to leave you just better together. We really are better together. So
absolutely. Well, thank
There's
you again. I appreciate it. Enjoy the rest of your day. And now I'm going to go eat dinner, put kids to bed, and figure out what I'm going to do tomorrow. So
rock and roll, dude. Thanks, Dan.
Thank you again.
Have a good one.
All right, you too. Bye.
Bye.